we haven't. You usually leave when I'm speaking. That's true. Yes.
So Bonnie and I have known each other a long time. We met over a bowl of popcorn. You remember that?
No.
So I helped. I wasn't officially assigned to be the chaplain at Eureka at the Newman Center. It was one of my side jobs amongst the many jobs I had. Bonnie was a college student there. And the Eureka Newman Center is a beautiful old house right on the edge of campus, perfectly located. But we had no money for ministry. So we would have our weekly mass, and afterwards, all we could afford was a big bowl of popcorn for the students. I think we had maybe water and popcorn. And I don't mean popcorn like those fancy microwave bags. I mean like Orville Redenbacher, shake it over a stove. That's all we could afford. And we would have popcorn. I remember that. And I remember meeting Bonnie as a college student there. Bonnie, have you ever, we've both spoken about Fulton Sheen quite a bit. Have you been on EWTN yet?
I have been on EWTN.
I've been on EWTN twice. This reminds me of my 2 EWTN appearances.
Yes.
The first one was a complete disaster. So I got invited to go down. They flew me down to EWTN. It's not easy to get to the studios in Alabama, so I had to go down the night before. And they put me in a guest house. They drove me to the guest house. And it was a completely bare room, no TV. There was a desk, chair, and a bed. And I wasn't talking until the evening. So I had all day to get nervous. Sitting in this blank room, staring at a white wall, I was built up anxiety. So finally, I get to the end of the slideshow. You mentioned the name of the host. And then the whole TV show, it seemed like he was bound and determined to prove how much he knew about Fulton Sheen and how little I knew about Fulton Sheen. So it did not go well.
I'm sorry. I will not do that.
This reminds me more, my second time
Yes.
was with Father Andrew Apostoli and Father Benedict Rochelle, two great holy Franciscan priests. And in that appearance, it was like a couple of old friends gathering to talk about their mutual friend, Fulton Sheen, and it was great.
Yeah.
That's what I feel like.
Good. Yes. That is what we're going to do. Okay.
So I thought maybe we'll talk about a little bit about our mutual friend and set a little context to talk about the life of Fulton Sheen, especially for those of you who maybe are unfamiliar with his life. And of course, if he is an old friend of yours already, then you won't mind just kind of reminiscing a little bit. So Fulton Sheen is born in 1895 in El Paso, so just about 45 minutes from here. He was the oldest of 4 boys. Family was involved in agriculture. His dad owned a hardware shop. He was a little bit of a tinkerer, almost a little bit of an adventurer, kind of a jack of all trades. But after 5 years in the country, after they had their 4 boys, his parents wanted him to be raised in a Catholic school setting. So they moved from El Paso to the big city of Peoria and settled in the neighborhood of the cathedral. So the street was probably being devoured by one of the hospitals now. But so somewhere in that area of OSF, Methodist, is where the Sheen family set up a household. So he and his brother could then walk to the cathedral grade school. He was an altar server in our cathedral church. If you get a chance to go down and pray in our cathedral, or to walk between the cathedral and the pastoral center, that's Fulton Sheen's neighborhood. Those are the streets that he walked, where he grew up. His grade school is now a parking lot, but he grew up right there. He was a brilliant student from grade school, went on down to Spalding High School just down the street, excelled in high school. He had the famous wine cruet story. You don't know the story when he was an altar boy and he dropped the cruet, and it sounded like a nuclear bomb exploding. He describes as no louder sound than a cruet hitting a marble floor in the presence of a bishop. And he thought for sure that his church career was over. He was going to be fired for being an altar server. But then Bishop Spalding, who was not known to be a friendly man, pulled him aside into the sacristy and had a great prophecy over this young boy. Rather than yelling at him, told him that when you grow up, you will go on to Louvain University like I did. You will go on to be a priest and a bishop like I am. And all those things happened in his life. So just these great moments. I mean, Fulton Sheen was really present in the city of Peoria. At the time he was graduating from Spalding, he was actually so brilliant. He received a scholarship to go to any college or university he wanted to in the country. And he was very excited, went back to tell the chaplain about this great scholarship. And the chaplain said, well, you're not going to do that, you're going to go to seminary. And he did. Fulton Sheen describes that there was never a time in his life that he didn't want to be a priest. He didn't know God was calling him to be a priest. So he went on to St. Viator's up in Bourbonnais, finished up at St. Paul's Seminary up in St. Paul, Minnesota, came back and was ordained a priest in our cathedral for our diocese 100 years ago this September. Offered his first Mass in his home parish, the cathedral. At that time, he consecrated his whole priesthood to our Blessed Mother. A consecration that his mother had began his baptism, he renewed at the time of his first communion, and then made a special commitment when he was ordained. And really great thing in our cathedral. Again, if you want to feel like Fulton Sheen is real, the statue that he prayed in front of is still in our cathedral. You can pray right there to the image of our Blessed Mother that meant so much in Fulton Sheen's own life. And because he was so brilliant, the bishop sent him right away to get advanced studies. He went overseas to Europe, got the highest degree of any academic institution in the world, an agrégé degree. He didn't just get it, he got it with the absolute highest honors. Great, he tells great stories. He's a great storyteller.
Yes. Yes.
So he comes back and rather expects his advanced degree that he'll go on to teach. But Bishop Dunn, our second bishop, to test his obedience and his humility, sent him to the south side of Peoria to minister at St. Patrick's Church. And I suspect that the south side of Peoria 100 years ago, it was roughly then kind of like it is now. It was a rough neighborhood. It was full of immigrants, the poor. There was actually a lot of anti-Catholic senators in that part of Peoria, and he took on that assignment with great zeal. Walked the streets of the south side of Peoria, kind of helped convert that whole part of town. And so less than a year later, Bishop Dunn called him in and said, because you were obedient to me, now you may go on, pursue your heart's desire, and go be a teacher. Great love of learning, great love of handing on the truth. So he went off to Washington, D.C. I think he taught there 20-some, almost 30 years. Very popular professor. Students, kind of like this, would stand in room only in his classrooms. They'd sit on the radiators just to listen to Monsignor Sheen speak. It was at that time that he really engaged cutting-edge technology, which was
the radio.
The radio, right. He would travel up to New York City about once a month, I think. He was a regular speaker on the Catholic Hour. They had different speakers who rotate in. But whenever Monsignor Sheen was on the radio, people, even on the radio, he had a way of communicating. So that as cutting-edge technology develops, and from the radio we get
television.
And so as this new medium, television, is being invented, there are certain laws that the networks had to give a certain amount of programming to nonprofits. And so they had to give something to the Catholics. So they knew that this priest was a pretty good communicator, so let's get this Sheen fellow to come on television. And from his very first show, he was captivated. He just had a way of using his eyes, of using his voice, of communicating a message through television. And eventually, he went on to win an Emmy Award for Outstanding TV Personality. It's almost, I think, impossible for us to appreciate what a cultural phenomenon Fulton Sheen became. And maybe some of you know the stories. When the bishop was on television, bars would stop. And whole towns would stop. Non-Catholics would stop. Non-Christians tuned in to listen, to watch the bishop on television. When he went to Australia, he went on kind of a mission trip with Cardinal Spellman. Again, it's just hard to fathom. Hundreds of thousands of people would come to the stadium to hear Bishop Sheen speak. They would line the rows as he passed through. I mean, if we think about rock star,
He was like Justin Bieber.
he was like, that must be your generation, right?
It's not even my generation, but you know who Justin Bieber is, so.
He was amazing. So as part of that ministry in 1951, he's ordained a bishop, auxiliary bishop, for the Archdiocese of New York, primarily so that he could become the national director for the missions. And all this ties in. He was mission-focused. Again, wanting to use, whether it's his academic acumen, or his red cape, or his piercing eyes, he wanted to use all of those gifts to lead other people to Jesus Christ. So as the national director for the missions, he traveled the world, spreading the message of Jesus Christ, traveled the country, raising money for the missions. He was always at, even grade school kids, send in a dime, anything you could give to the missions. All of the money he made in his television show was all given for the sake of the missions. Such a mission-centered heart. He did that for several years with the missions and his TV show, using his fame to spread the good news of Jesus Christ. 1966, he's already 70-some years old. Math is not my strong suit. So I think he's already 70, and he goes on to become the diocesan bishop. So he's already lived a very full career. Went to Vatican II, came back to Vatican II, all excited for the renewal of the church, goes to be the diocesan bishop in Rochester, New York. It doesn't go too well.
No, he's not. That's not his strongest hour.
It was not, and he was quite truthful about that.
Yes.
And he admitted it. Those were rough years for him. Any of you who either survived the late 60s or heard stories about the late 60s, it was rough. It was trying to make sense of what the renewal of Vatican II wanted, cultural revolution going on. But he did that for 3 years. And he gave his heart until finally, in 1969, Pope Paul VI accepts his retirement, gives him the title Honorary Archbishop. Then he spends the last 10 years of his life really doing what he loved, being a priest. And speaking to groups like this, doing parish missions, diocesan missions. Missions have a very special focus to speak to priests and seminarians. I've heard, often when I go on retreat, there's a little hermitage I like to go to up in northern Illinois, and it's in the wilderness, and I'll bring, Fulton Sheen is my retreat master, and I'll bring some of those retreats he preached to priests from the mid-70s, and I really find in those last years of his life an incredible synthesis of his teaching, of his spirituality. You can hear him becoming a saint. You can hear everything coming together in his heart in those last years of his life. His love for the priests, his love for the church, his love for Jesus Christ really comes out in those last years. He experiences a number of sicknesses, heart disease, various heart surgeries, until finally on December 9, 1979, he dies at the entrance to his chapel in New York City. There's just a little overview. There's so many other things we can talk about his life. His love of Blessed Mother, his love of the Eucharist, his cause. So by the way, the title of my next talk is Purposefully Misleading and Absolutely Accurate. So there's just a little teaser for the next talk about making a saint. Purposefully misleading and absolutely accurate. His cause really begins right around the year 2000 with some lay people who really believed that Fulton Sheen had a message that should go on in the life of the church. A life of prayer, an example of prayer, and a teaching of tremendous holiness. So it takes a while for that to get organized. They approached Bishop Jenke within a few weeks after Bishop Jenke arrived in Peoria in the spring of 2002. He immediately is encouraging the cause should move forward. By that fall, the cause is officially open. It takes the next 8 years to study everything Fulton Sheen ever said or wrote, to look at his whole life, interview people around the world who knew him, to put forward to the Vatican that he lived a heroic life. Benedict declared him venerable, to kind of affirm that he lived a life worth emulating, a heroic life that we can all look at. There are then, meanwhile, people are praying for his intercession. Here's the teaser for Bonnie's talk. Various miracles come in from around the world. There are a few of them are fully researched by the local church. And you don't mind me saying this, do you?
No.
It's like each one, how can you talk about being more miraculous? But it's like each one gets more miraculous. Like God is crying out, somebody down there listen to me. Until finally, we have Bonnie's story, which was the third documented miracle.
In fact, when I first approached the Sheen Foundation, I was told, we already have enough. We don't need you. But when I went into a little more detail that my son was a stillborn and did not have a heartbeat for 61 minutes, and now is a healthy, normal boy, and it's all, we believe, because of the intercession of Fulton Sheen. Then they were like, oh yeah, we'll look into that. That sounds good, yeah. Yeah.
And what's awesome, I think because Bonnie's been used to saying this for so long, we believe it's a miracle. The church has now affirmed, after years of study from doctors and theologians, until finally the Holy Father himself, with the recommendation of the whole team of cardinals, we can now say as a church, God worked a miracle in the Engstrom family. So it's through the intercession of Fulton Sheen. So I'm going to share one of my favorite Fulton Sheen stories.
Okay.
I have several Fulton Sheen stories. Fulton Sheen, he's going to preach in a grand cathedral, packed. He goes up to the great marble pulpit, and he notices, at the base of the pulpit, there's a mother with a young baby. And he begins preaching, and he's getting fiery. The baby starts crying. So he gets even more fiery, and he starts screaming. The baby screams even louder. And he is just whipping it up. Until finally he notices mother and child get up to leave, and he pauses and, oh, madam, you don't need to leave. The baby's not bothering me. And she says, no, but you're bothering the baby. Now, I love that story for various reasons. I love that story because there's something about the saints that should bother us. Jesus bothered all kinds of people. In fact, he bothered them so much they eventually had to crucify him. When we look to the lives of the saints, they should be our friends, our role models. We should get to know them, have a personal relationship with the saints. But they should also, in the end, I think, bother us because of the challenge they give to each one of us. Don't you know, Bobby?
Yes. Actually, I have two examples of ways that he has kind of pestered me a little bit. The first is when it comes to the Blessed Mother. When I'm a cradle Catholic, but I've never liked praying the rosary. Can you admit that in a Catholic church? I've never liked praying the rosary. And it was always hard for me to connect with our Blessed Mother. But Fulton Sheen has that poem that he didn't write, but he popularized, Lovely Lady Dressed in Blue. And there's a line where it says, lovely lady dressed in blue, teach me how to pray. God was just your little boy, and you know the way. And the more I thought about that, now I have 8 kids, and I maybe had 2 or 3 kids when I first came across that poem. But as I thought about that, I was like, yeah, if someone wants to know my kids, they're going to understand my kids by meeting me and coming into our home and meeting Travis. Like the context that my kids fit into will make sense once they come into our home, That's why they think things are funny. That's why they like certain, my kids know who Johnny Cash is because of me, And so things like that, it just makes sense. I realized that Mother Mary could do the same thing. And another thing, I had always kind of had a hard time with the To Jesus Through Mary. The first time I did 33 Days to Morning Glory, I was just like, ooh, I know this was good enough for Mother Teresa and JP2, but I don't know. I was so presumptuous. But again, with Fulton Sheen just kind of over and over again, and he has this great book called The World's First Love, which is all about our Blessed Mother. And reading that and getting to know about his devotion to Mary, that just led me to know her and to